you to actually reveal the numbers. Give me a sense of what we should expect as far as growth is concerned in FY18. I mean, we've got all kinds of calculations being done by the likes of CII, etc., who talk about a 2% gain to the GDP on account of the rollout of the GST and so on and so forth. What should we realistically expect?
Look, on the impact of the GST on GDP, I have not done any serious calculation. And all that I've seen, I don't, there's lots of uncertainty about all these estimates. I do know that the impact on GDP and revenues in the medium term will be positive and substantial. In the short run, it's going to be even more difficult to predict because there are all these implementation challenges ahead. So all we can say is that the impact on GDP will be positive, but the timing and magnitude are still up in the air. A lot will depend upon, the experience that we gain over the next 3 to 6 months. And also what policy decisions GST Council takes pursuant to, learning from the experience of implementing the GST in the months ahead.
Rates have now been finalized, Mr. Subramanian, and your committee, your panel had suggested rates which are different from the ones that the GST Council has finally gone ahead with. Now, we understand the political compulsions of this multi-tiered rate structure, but there are complexities involved as well. In retrospect, do you believe that or in light of what we've now seen or what we have to live with, do you believe that this, in fact, is much more of a compromise than you would have liked it to be?
Look, first of all, I think in all these things, when you say what was the phrase used?
Multi-tiered.
Layered, multi-tiered, or whatever it was. I mean, you have to... Yeah, exactly. You have to compare it with what we have now. I think if it's multi-tiered tomorrow, it's multi-tiered today. So, at least you've eliminated one multi, So in that sense, it's a big improvement on what we have today. Because, not least because remember that today, for any one product in India, any one good, you did not have the same rate across all of India. Going forward, GST, you are going to have one product, one rate by the center, the same rate by all the states. So much more uniformity, also fewer rates than what we have today. But I mean, absolutely, relative to what we would have liked, yes, it's not there yet. But I think the way to think about this is that in the GST Council, do we have a deliberative democratic mechanism that can get us to those simpler rates and something that you don't mention enough, also get us to reducing the omissions from the tax base, the gaps in the tax base, whether it's land and real estate, alcohol, petroleum, health, education, power. I mean, those are also things that I think the GST Council has to work towards to improve going forward. And I think having seen the way the GST Council works now over these many, many months, I think that, the quality and the spirit of debate is such that, and also, really remarkably well steered by the finance minister, I think we have a mechanism which we should, I'm not saying, the jury is still out whether this will happen or not, but, one should have over time more and more confidence that this deliberative process will in fact get us to, that GST nirvana of whatever, very, very simple rates and as wide a tax base as possible. But I think that, but remember, nirvana will always elude us, but the thing is that can we get closer and closer to it as possible?
Okay, you're saying nirvana will always elude us, but you're hoping that we'll get closer to it as possible. Given the fact that you've seen the workings of the GST Council, you've seen the debate and the discussion, whether it's on what should be omitted from the ambit of the GST and what should eventually come into the ambit of the GST, as well as the possibilities of converging these multi-tiered rates into maybe, eventually one rate. What are we talking about here? 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? What's the sense that you get about the political will, the appetite within what you've heard and witnessed as part of the GST Council meetings?
Yeah, see, I think, look, I think in terms of, trying to achieve things by consensus, the GST Council has been a remarkable success. I mean, absolutely. I mean, who would have thought 29 plus 2 plus 1 set of interests could actually, be brought together? So I think but in terms of the timing of when you think these improvements will happen, I think a lot of it is going to depend upon the actual experience of implementation. Nothing succeeds like success. If we do a good job of implementing what we have, we will get more improvement. So a lot of it is going to depend upon, the learning by doing and the learning by undoing and the learning by making mistakes. I think that those are the things that will determine how fast we can get towards that, GST nirvana that we just spoke about.
If I may ask you a final question, Mr. Subramanian, 55,000 crore rupees, that is what has been budgeted as far as the compensation to state governments are concerned. Now, in my conversation with the Revenue Secretary, the suggestion seemed to be that perhaps we will overshoot that number. If that were to be the case as far as FY18 is concerned, what kind of implications will it have for the fisc?
Look, first of all, let me point out a basic, kind of inconsistency in many of these questions that are asked. I mean, I'm not saying you are being inconsistent, but, the more you think that revenues will fall short, almost by definition, your inflation concern should melt away because the one is a kind of, direct consequence of the other. My own view is that, there will be a downward pressure on prices. One consequence, a logical consequence is that, the revenues may not be as revenue neutral as we were hoping, but some of that shortfall we should claw back through better compliance and more, taxpayers entering the net from the informal sector into the formal sector. So, and then at the end of the day, how much we fall short, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that I am at this stage not alarmed that that we will fall short by huge amounts. But let's wait and see. I'm hoping that the compliance gains will be substantial, that we will get back some. And if we fall short on some, I always think we'll have to respond to that. How we respond to that is going to be, of course, a big, not just a question, but also it's also going to be a macroeconomic policy question.
So my final question, what gives you the most hope with the advent of the GST, and what would make you, what would keep you up at night?
Well, certainly tonight is a night for celebration and rejoicing, so I don't think we should be worried about that tonight. But I think in terms of, I think there are legitimate anxieties about, the IT system, the compliance burdens, the familiarity with the system, the kind of outstanding transitional issues, stocks, excise exemptions and so on. So all these things we have to work through. I mean, there's no one big thing that I'm going to say gives me anxieties, but on balance, I'm hopeful that, within a few months' time, we will work our way through these teething challenges and, come to see the GST for the absolutely historic landmark and kind of epochal achievement that it is, politically and economically.
Arvind Subramanian, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us on what is a very, very big day for the Indian economy. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time here on CNBC TV 18.